Welcome to Demand and Disrupt, the Disability Podcast. Here, we will learn to advocate for ourselves and each other. This podcast is supported with funds from the Advocado Press, based in Louisville, Kentucky.
Welcome to Demand and Disrupt, a disability podcast. I am your host, Kimberly Parsley.
And I'm Lisa McKinley. Thank you for joining us.
And Lisa, you are doing our interview today. So tell me who you talked to.
Today we'll hear from Rebecca Bridges. Rebecca is the wife of Eric Bridges. He is the president and CEO of American Foundation of the Blind. And Rebecca, actually, she had a career for 20 years. And just a few years ago, she decided to leave her career to focus on homeschooling her boys. So she's going to tell us about homeschooling as a completely blind parent and about parenting completely blind with her husband being completely blind as well, and how they navigate living right outside of Washington, D.C. and how they navigate things. And it's just a really fascinating interview. Rebecca is a really fascinating person. I've known her for a while, and she's just very well spoken, and I really enjoyed talking to her.
Wonderful. I can't wait. I always liked the idea of homeschooling my kids, but I always knew I was not cut out for that.
Oh yes. I don't know how she does it. One of the things, she's a really good Braille reader, and I think that helps her a lot. She talks about that, and I might have tried it and had I been a better Braille reader, but hey, we're both trying to figure that out and learn and become better Braille readers. So
your Braille skills are so far beyond mine. Really, your skills are so far beyond mine. But we always keep learning, right? We always keep learning. I wanted to tell our listeners, after we shamelessly begged for contributions last time, friend of the podcast, Carissa Johnson, also the manager of the Center for Accessible Living office in Murray, Kentucky, sent in something that happened to her. She was called to, I think in her capacity with the Center for Accessible Living, was called to a venue. This person wanted to turn this space into an events kind of venue, and they wanted to do an accessibility audit, I guess is what you would call it. And so good on her for seeing the need for that. And so Carissa, of course, a wheelchair user, showed up to the venue with, I think she had some other people with her, and the place was on the second floor of a building that did not have an elevator. So,
oh wow. Really?
Yeah, right.
How is that even going to work? So I hope she gave them some good suggestions.
Knowing Carissa, she handled it with such charm and grace that I frankly don't possess with anything, let alone a frustrating situation. So I'm sure she handled it wonderfully, and I bet this place has an elevator now based on her recommendations.
Yeah, probably. They probably had an elevator the next day, you think?
Carissa is a kind of a powerhouse. You don't want to get in her way. She knows how to get stuff done. So I loved that story. Would love to hear more stories. And, you and I were talking, it would be great. Also, people who aren't disabled.
Yes, I want to hear how this podcast has influenced the lives of our listeners who aren't disabled. Maybe you work in the field of disability, maybe you have a loved one, or for some reason you have found our podcast and listening to it. Let us know what you think. Let us know how it has impacted your life, how it's made you look at things from a different perspective. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, it would. That would be great. That's an interesting perspective, because those people who do live with or work with people with disabilities, they have seen a lot, experienced a lot, and they have a lot of opinions and feelings about things, so we want to hear from those folks too. As a matter of fact, our the first episode we ever did was with Dave Mathis. I've offered to give him the title executive producer of our show because he does so much for us and with us. He is not disabled, but a greater ally to the disability community, you simply will not find than Dave. So yeah, I would love to hear that. So people, write us, demandanddisrupt@gmail.com. Also, if you want to leave us a review on a campaign to get a bunch of reviews, particularly I'm focused on Apple Podcasts, and I know that's not how everybody listens, but regardless if that's how you listen to the podcast or not, you can go to Apple Podcast on the website. Just search for Apple Podcasts. They are on the web now. You can listen to podcasts on the web and not just the app. But if you have an iPhone or iPad, you can open up the Apple Podcast app. And if you've subscribed, then we'll be in your library. If not, just do a search for Demand and Disrupt. And while you're on that page, go ahead and follow us so you don't miss an episode. And then
that really does help, doesn't it? It helps. If the more reviews we have, it will bring the name of our podcast up in suggestions for other people who may not have known it existed. So yeah, if you can send us a review like that, it would be so helpful, and it will get us out there to more listeners.
It does help. It does help because if someone goes to the podcast app and they just search up disability, like, I wonder what's out there. And ours will come up nearer the top of the list, the top of the suggestions. And that means more people are likely to listen to us. And we think we have a lot to offer. So we'd love for that to happen. It gives us a
warm fuzzy when you tell us we're wonderful, right?
That's really the thing. It's really all about making us happy. That's what it is.
That's the only. No.
Yeah, once you get on that Demand and Disrupt page, go ahead and go down to ratings and reviews. You can give us a rating. 5 stars would be great. We would appreciate that. And then if you feel so inclined, go ahead and give us an actual review. Tell us what you think, what you learned, what you like. You can even tell us what you don't like because we read those reviews. Tell us everything. So we're developing. We've got a lot of friends, don't we? A lot of friends of the podcast.
Met lots of wonderful people, made lots of wonderful connections, and we're looking forward to making more. Well, Kimberly, there is a new audiobook out that I'm so excited to listen to. I interviewed Frankie James a few months ago. Some of you may remember the interview. Frankie's sister, Teresa, was sent to a nursing home against her will, and her sister, Frankie, fought very hard to have that reversed and got Teresa out of the nursing home. The book is Freeing Teresa, and it is now out on Audible, and it's just going to be amazing because she has a full cast of actors playing the parts and reading the parts of the characters in the book. And the book is already in audio. Frankie is reading it herself, but now she has a whole cast of actors. One of the actresses is actually from the series Glee. So that's going to just be amazing to listen to it. And I can't wait. So you all head over, check that out, and then email us about that. Let us know what you think about that, and we can pass that on to Frankie.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. And I will put links to purchase that audiobook in the show notes so that people can find it there. Very exciting. I got my copy. Can't wait to listen to it.
Yes, that's what I'm doing tomorrow. I'm just going to drink coffee and listen to an audiobook and not move all day. So, yeah.
You have described my perfect day right there. That is my perfect day. Okay. Well, everyone, thank you for joining us. And now listen to Lisa's interview with Rebecca Bridges.
Hello, everyone. Today I am with Rebecca Bridges. Hello, Rebecca. How are you?
Hello, Lisa. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing well, thanks.
Well, thank you for joining me. Rebecca and I actually attended school together at the Indiana School for the Blind way back in the day. It's been a while, hasn't it?
Yes.
So Rebecca's a very lovely person. She has a very, I think, amazing story, and she's going to be here telling us more about it today. So Rebecca, if you would just start by telling us a little more about yourself and your family.
Sure. Well, I am Rebecca. I live in the Washington, D.C. area, just outside of D.C. in Virginia. and I am totally blind due to being born a preemie, and my retina's detached shortly after birth. So I have no, if I ever had sight, I have no recollection of that. I am married to my husband, Eric, of 17 years, and he is also blind. We live with our 2 guide dogs and our 2 precocious boys who are 9 and 4, and they are fully sighted. My husband is the president and CEO of the American Foundation for the Blind, which recently celebrated 100 years. And I enjoyed almost a 20-year career. After college, I moved out to the Washington, D.C. area where I met my husband and had several different jobs in the I worked with government clients. I worked for a nonprofit, a variety of different places. And last year, about a year ago now, I stepped away from my career to focus full time on my family. We're not like, we're not unlike other families in that, we keep busy with kids' activities and church and traveling and cooking and just generally having fun together. So that's a little bit about me.
Yes, I love that you were able to go out and have the career and you took a step back and wanted to spend that time with your family. Can you tell me a little bit more about what is it like? What are the differences maybe with blind parenting with both you and your husband being visually impaired?
Yeah, so there are a few things that come to mind. So I would say that we often need to be more organized. So, like trying to find things or making sure things get put away in the same place. And planning ahead is another thing that we have to do as blind parents because we don't drive. So we have to rely on other people's schedules, whether that's a bus schedule or paratransit or whomever. We that is a little bit different. And I think, we have to make sure that, some other kind of funny things, making sure that your kids' socks match. And maybe that's not important. Some people love mismatched socks, but that drives me insane.
Oh, that's funny.
So making sure that your kids are dressed appropriately. Like we do not wear our hats and our, athletic shorts to church on Sunday, right? So and I've made that mistake where my kids have left the house and they're in the wrong shoes and the wrong outfit, and we're, 15 minutes down the road, so we're not coming back, people. It's just what it is, and
It is what it
hopefully no
is.
one notices or cares. Not too long ago, we were finishing up our school year, and I wanted to take a picture of my 9-year-old with printed out a sign, last day of 4th grade, right? And I'm like, hey, stand on the porch and take a picture and make sure you look nice, da da da. So he does it. We take a picture, and then I put it through my AI tool, and it describes a boy wearing mismatched socks and with a house number in the background and other funky characteristics, and I'm just like, okay, well, yeah. So I think we just have to be, I guess, just again, organization, paying attention, planning ahead. Those are some of the things that I think are, come to mind.
So very intentional.
Hmm.
It reminds when my boys were young, we had this routine and they didn't know it was my way of checking that everything was in order. I would sing a little song and that was their cue. They would come and give me a hug and a kiss. And when they'd give me a hug and a kiss, I'd smell their breath to see if they'd brushed their teeth. I'd pat them on the top of the head to see if their hair was in order. And, as I was hugging them, I was feeling to check that, they were in the right clothing and all the things. And I think it's little things like that we do that I don't think people really understand. We have our ways, right?
No, I love that. That's such a creative way to do it. And I think we can easily do these things without, like you said, without people knowing that it's happening. But because they don't know, they also can't appreciate, some of those differences and some of those things that we have to pay attention to that others don't.
Exactly. Like we are going to know if their shoes aren't tied because we are going to hear the little tink, 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 tink of the
Oh.
shoelaces hitting the floor. So tell me about the homeschooling. How does that work for you?
Yeah, so we do homeschool our children, and this was not something that we ever intended to do. We did not have children and set out and say, "Boy, we'd love to homeschool our kids." Like many people, COVID changed a lot of things and really changed our focus, opened our eyes, so to speak, haha, to a lot. And so in our case, when we were faced with the prospect of the schools being shuttered and closed, and that was a problem in and of itself for two full-time working parents, and I was at home with a baby, a 3-month-old at the time, and so where our catalyst for homeschooling was the app that our school district used at the time to communicate with parents, send assignments, collect work, et cetera, along with the documents that they would share were not accessible to us as blind parents. And so we were thinking, well, okay, how are we going to navigate? And of course, at the time, our son was finishing kindergarten. And by the time it's like, okay, it takes us 10 minutes to figure out what we're supposed to do in the app because it's like button, 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 right? And then by that time, I've lost my child, right? He's gone. He's doing something else. And so, and a friend of mine from church said, "Hey, have you ever thought about homeschooling?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's insane." And she says, "No, really. He's going into first grade. It'll take him an hour a day. That's all you need." And I'm like, "Seriously? But what am I going to do with him for the rest of the day?" Um, but we were all in that boat, right? We all had kids at home. It was hard. But we decided that, things got a little contentious between us and the school district. They wouldn't meet with us without an attorney until we got an attorney, and then it took months, and then it got ugly. And we decided that our kids couldn't wait, and that we were just going to take the leap and give it a go. Like, hey, man, everything else is all screwed up. It's COVID. Schools are closed. What are kids really going to learn anyway? So we're going to go for it. In terms of how that works for us, we just some of the logistical things. So I teach the primary subject. So it took us a while, when you have your kid at home and you're solely responsible for their education, it took me a while to figure out, okay, like what is homeschooling? What does it mean to homeschool your kids? And I quickly figured out this is not public school at home. Like I originally was like, okay, we're going to do math at 9, we're going to do reading at 9:15, and that is insane. Like you cannot recreate school at home. So I had to really, I was like eating up all these podcasts and websites and all this information about curriculum. There are hundreds and thousands of options out there in terms of, that really make it possible for parents to teach their children. And it took me a while to believe that I could do it and to find, it took us over a year to find a curriculum that I could use and that my kid didn't hate or, could tolerate, right? And where he would thrive. And so, I do the primary teaching. Over time, we've found an amazing homeschool community. So what I've learned is that there are a lot more homeschoolers than you think. And not only that, but there are a lot more working homeschooling families than you would think. Like when I think about homeschooling, I think, well, the only people who can do that are parents who don't work, or moms essentially, because mostly, or moms or dads or whatever, who don't work. And I quickly realized that that wasn't the case. Even though I have stepped away now, I wasn't at first. And so I really found community online at first and now locally. So we're in a homeschool co-op that's taught by where classes are taught by parents. So I teach there also, and my boys go there. We have, that once a week. I get the books. I mean, we've tried online programs, but because my son was so young at the time, I really felt he needed more fine motor skills. And so we went back to textbooks. And so I found a publisher whose materials I really liked and wrote to them and said, "Hey, I'm totally blind. I'm homeschooling my children who are sighted, and I'd really like to use your materials, but I'm going to buy the print. But would you send me the digital copies in addition to that without me having to purchase a second copy?" And at first they weren't quite, I'm not sure if they understood, and we kind of went back and forth, and now they know me by name and they just flip it right into the website, into my downloads, and I can pull them down. So I get the books in PDF And I use my Braille display connected to my iPhone to teach, to read the material. There is some prep work I have to do to, pull out, like maybe I'll, copy the answer keys from the PDF to a different file so I have them when we're going over stuff. Because when you're looking at a PDF on your iPhone that's 500 pages long, it's pretty ugly, right? So, there's some prep work I have to do, but you get used to it. And since we started, this doesn't really have as much to do with blindness, but we've really come, the accessibility issue was our initial, and the closures were our initial catalyst to do it. But our families really come to realize that this is really just an extension of parenting. And we really feel, my husband and I really feel that we are called to do this. And we've found so many reasons to continue homeschooling. Like we have more time to devote to teaching about things we care about, like God and character and values and life skills, cooking and laundry and chores. And, it's just a way of life now.
It's great. It sounds like it's really working out for you all and that it's something that's really working for your family. Do you see yourself continuing through with the homeschooling until through high school?
I'd like to think so. But I think it depends on each kid. It depends on, what they want to do also. I mean, we are the parents, but I do, especially as they get older, I do care about, obviously what they're interested in, what they think. And, for example, if, homeschooled kids can't, in Virginia anyway, where I live, can't play high school sports at the public school. Okay, so if my kid decides that he wants to play sports and at that level, or can't feed that interest another way, through a different program or what have you, then that might be something we would consider. But for a variety of reasons, we really, we're in it for the long haul until we're not. And but you never know. I mean, COVID taught us that, right? All, the best laid plans, you just never know what's going to happen in life. So never say never, I suppose.
You really never know, do you? You mentioned accessibility earlier and that being one of the catalysts to start the homeschooling. Are there areas where accessibility might be able to improve and help the way you do homeschooling and just life in general?
Oh yeah, so I think that, well, I'll tell you what works. So again, what works well, again, the iPhone, the use of technology, knowing, being able to use a Braille display. I'm so thankful that I can read Braille. I mean, I've talked to other blind homeschoolers who, maybe don't have as solid a Braille skills, and I'm telling you, it makes such a difference in terms of my ability to really keep on top of things and work with my kids. I think, and so having that works well. Most books, websites, documents, things that I want to get access to are reasonably accessible. There are some times when I need to make modifications or, ask for help or, do different things. But generally it works pretty well. I use the Kindle app and Bookshare quite a bit. And again, with my iPhone, I use Bookshare just on my Braille display. I have a Mantis Q40, which I'm in love with. And, so I can download books directly onto my device. But I also read a lot with Kindle. And then, there are some touch screen devices that work well. Like we have a Kasori air fryer that I can connect to an app that thankfully is reasonably accessible. We have a rowing machine that works pretty well. Some things that not so great. I think that it would be nice if there were more options when it came to when it comes to the purchasing of appliances, right? I mean, I'm sure you've been here where like, oh, my dishwasher went out and I got to show up to the store and go, okay, do you have anything with buttons?
Yes,
And they're
absolutely.
like, huh? No. Or I have one with buttons, and I mean, I got lucky the last time I did this. I found the only one with buttons and they had it in stock. Praise the Lord. But, my stove, we recently redid our kitchen and quite a bit of our house. And so we had to buy a new range and oven, all that, and new fridge. And so just you don't have the options that everybody else has just by either the apps are don't work great with voiceover, or they're touch screen and you can't use an app, or they're very menu driven, things like that. So I think more accessible appliances would be great. More seamless access to a lot of times, apps, they update all the time. And when that happens, sometimes accessibility breaks. So, they forget to label buttons, and I don't think it's that people intentionally do this, but they just don't know any better. So I really wish that there was more education about accessibility. I know that there's Teach Access and other groups that do this, but it would be nice to have that be more universally considered. Sometimes textbooks or PDFs, like different documents that I need, it'd be nice if they were formatted a little bit better. Some of them where there's bunches of tables and columns and things, the reading order isn't right, and it's really challenging when I'm looking at something and reading it to my son or working with it, and he's like, "No, Mom, that's 2 problems down," and I'm like, "Oh, well, that was the next one on my thing." Like, so I guess those are just a few things that I think could still stand to be improved.
Right. And yeah, I'm really grateful for all the technology that is available to us. And yeah, it's opened up how much we can do independently. That, I recently presented at a accessibility technology conference, and just the things that we have that we didn't have 20 years ago. I mean, can you imagine doing some of the things we're able to do today 20 years ago just wouldn't have been possible. One of my favorite apps right now is the Be My Eyes app, which actually saved me from putting Rid-X in the washing machine yesterday. I thought, oh, this is a washing machine pod. No, it wasn't. Somebody, and when you're living with, when you're living with a sighted spouse, sometimes there's their own challenges because they don't see things and see the world from your same perspective. They try, but things get moved. So it's made things really, really nice for me as well. But Rebecca, it seems like you're doing a really amazing job with raising your boys, with both of you and your husband both being blind. I know it's so hard for a lot of people to wrap their head around that. And I know we have listeners out there who might be considering having a family. Maybe there's someone blind out there who's considering having children, but they're worried about how their blindness might hold them back. What would you say to someone like in that situation?
Well, I think, like any decision to have a family, this is no different, right? You should think about things like, being able to provide for them and some of the obvious things. So that's no different. I think a few things. There are, parenting is parenting, and it's hard whether you're sighted, blind, or whatever is going on, right? There are challenges no matter what, and nobody is an expert. I certainly am not. I'm anything but. And I learn something new every day that I, wish I'd known in maybe a different situation, right? But there are a lot of people who are blind, who are parents. You are a parent, you are a blind parent, and yes, you have a sighted spouse, but it doesn't make you any less of a parent, right? Because your spouse is sighted. I think that there are real challenges, though. I'll talk about some of the challenges, and I want to get back to some other positive things too. But having to rely on others, or like I mentioned earlier, like other people's schedules, cars. There are things that can be very stressful. Like my kids go to summer camps, and I have to pick them up at a certain time. I don't always need to be the first one there, but I sure hope I'm not the last. And so, but my transportation isn't always reliable. Maybe I don't get there quite when I need to. And it's every day I'm Like when we came back from vacation last week and I was certain that we were going to jump back into summer camps. And then I looked at my calendar and was like, oh, praise God, I don't have to do that this week. Right? Because it is anxiety inducing trying to make sure like and how do you find your kid? These facilities are huge, right? Which entrance of the 7 to this building is my kid at? Those kinds of things. Perceptions. The reality is people can treat you differently as a blind person and do sometimes. And my husband calls it, well, there's also, it's related, but the blanket of low expectations, right? People don't expect a whole lot from us as blind people, in a lot of ways. And so that can be challenging, and it's especially challenging when your children observe that and when they see people treating you differently, or when you have to talk through your children through a situation like I did a few weeks ago and have had several times where we're trying to get an Uber or a Lyft and they will not take me because of my dog.
Oh, wow.
And this happens, and I have to not only keep my cool, deal with the driver, get a picture of his plates, whatever, but then I have to talk my children through it. And they're watching discrimination and ignorance right in front of their faces. And I have to coach them on how to handle it, and I have to keep my own cool. And so I think that there are real challenges, but there are so many, there are techniques for everything. There are so many people out there doing it. Reach out. I mean, there's networks on Facebook. There's a Blind Parent Alliance group on Facebook. There's another one called Blind Parents Connect. There's all kinds of ways. I mean, there's people in, ACB, NFB, the consumer groups who are parents. You don't have to look too hard to find people who've parented and gone before you. And, where there's a will, there's a way. You figure out, okay, I can get squeaky shoes for my toddler. Not only are they, super annoying, but they're cute. Right? They're not ugly. There's so many, I had ones with bear faces, and I'd take my kid to church and everybody'd be like, oh my gosh, where did you get those? And so there are ways around, around some of the challenges. And I think too, there are some, I don't know about benefits of being a blind parent, but there are some things that I've observed that I feel like have been really interesting and powerful in some ways. And maybe, I can't say for certain, but to some degree are attributable to my children having blind parents. And these are things like, our children were very verbal at a young age. It didn't take them long to realize that pointing and gesturing and didn't get them what they wanted, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
They would have to use their words or whatever words they could come up with. They also were good at, at a similar age, placing things in our hands or putting our hands on things that they wanted us to know about or be aware of. My son, when he was 2, took me into the middle of his preschool classroom, put my hand on the floor, and proceeded to tell me about, in his 2-year-old way, attempt to show me that he and his little girlfriend had drawn all over the floor when they weren't supposed to.
Oh, no.
Right. So like they'll do that. And I observed at a similar age that there was that same girl, before he knew her, on the day she visited the school, he would take her hand and show her all around the classroom. She's fully sighted, but that's just what he did. He was inclined to do that. And, our kids have excellent observational skills. They know what's around them. They pay attention. They are excellent navigators. When one of mine was little, and a driver would miss the turn, he'd go, you missed the pass, you missed the pass. And, my kids will say, don't go this way, go that way. Or, they know exactly where they are at all times, especially on the road. Like, I feel like they'll be good drivers, hopefully.
That's
when they're older, 'cause
interesting. My oldest is like that, and I never really attributed it to maybe my blindness, but it could be. That's
well,
interesting.
and I don't know, right? But it's possible. And I think that our kids are also I've noticed this with my older one, and I'm beginning to notice with my younger one too, is that I don't know if they're more empathetic because they have blind parents, but they're more aware. So they point out if they see somebody in a wheelchair, if they see someone with a cane or a dog or, you know, whatever, they point them out. They also will go and help. They'll hold doors. They will for other people, and they're not just people with disabilities, but anybody. They hold doors. They will, go. We were at an event one time with my husband's organization, and my son saw some people kind of wandering around in the lobby and walked over and asked them what they were looking for and went and took them to the
Aw.
place they were looking for. And I think they have that awareness that I think has been really interesting to observe, and a high emotional intellect, I think.
Wow. Rebecca, you have been a pleasure to speak with today. I wondered if you had any parting words of wisdom for our listeners out there who are either parenting with a disability or they're thinking about becoming a parent. What would be your parting words of wisdom?
I think finding a network, finding people who have done it before, been there, done that, asking lots of questions and not being afraid, because we do have challenges as blind parents, but so does everybody else. They're just different, right? And
Exactly.
I think there are so many, the technology is great. There's so many tools and techniques now that we can use, that can equip us to be successful. And I think, not taking ourselves too seriously, and or even assuming that some of the challenges we face, sometimes I think things might be related to my blindness, and it turns out they really aren't. And I think just not taking ourselves too seriously and just trying to enjoy the journey. Like we are, I know not everybody may feel this way, but I believe that each of us are put here for a reason, and we are the way we are for a reason, and it's intentional. And so as I've gotten older, I've really tried to lean into that. And, for example, I was in an Uber a few years ago, and a woman asked me, my driver said, "Do you believe in Jesus?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And she said, "Well, maybe if you believed in him a little more, you wouldn't be blind."
Oh,
And I
my
was like, "Well, maybe
goodness.
if you believed in him a little more, you would know that I'm here and blind for a reason, and that's part of God's plan." And I think those things are hurtful, and they take you back to that place where you're like the blind kid on the playground that nobody wants to play with.
Oh,
But it's powerful, and if you lean into that and you really just embrace, we can't change that we have a disability in many instances, right? And we didn't choose to be this way, but we can lean in and make the best of it. And I think, we deserve that. We deserve to do that, and those around us deserve for us to do that too, because we'll be really hard to live with if we don't do that. So I think, if you want to do it, it can be done, and it can be just such a blessing and a privilege. And I'm so grateful for everything that I've been given, and for the career I've had, and for the opportunities that I've had, the friends I've made, the family that we've built, that I've been blessed with. It's been great, and I'm just thankful and really trying to enjoy it.
well, thank you so much, Rebecca. Thank you for talking to me today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
If you like the podcast, remember to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you really like the podcast, we'd love it if you could leave us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. That helps more people to find us. If you really, really like the podcast, then please tell someone about it, either in person or send them an email or just share the link on social media. Thank you all. Every bit helps, and it makes a huge difference for us. If you'd like a transcript, please send us an email to demandanddisrupt@gmail.com and put transcript in the subject line. Thanks to Chris Unkin For our theme music, Demand and Disrupt is a publication of the Advocado Press with generous support from the Center for Accessible Living located in Louisville, Kentucky. And you can find links to buy the book, A Celebration of Family, Stories of Parents with Disabilities, in our show notes. Thanks, everyone.
You say you've seen a change in me. Just for once I think I would agree. We both know there's a difference. We've had our curtain call, and this time the writing's on the wall. War of words we can't defend. Two damaged hearts refuse to mend. This situation's pointless with each and every day. It's not a game we need to play. To make things better, repair and rearrange things, but each and every letter spells out the need for us to open up our minds and hearts to change. Then what will be, will be. Disregard for good to set us free. There's just no way of knowing if love lives anymore. We'll turn out the light, then close the door. Try to make things better, repair and rearrange things, but each and every letter spells out